Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack, back in to bring you a review of all the healer changes and tier set bonuses coming in for the healers in Season 3 of The War Within. Starting off, RDruid and all healers, and we'll cover it very quickly with all of the raid cooldowns. All of them are getting buffed, but it's basically a buff for 5-mans. Okay, they say that it's intended to be an overall buff in 5-player content, a medium to small buff between 16 and 19 players, no change at 20 players, and a nerf beyond 20 players. So, Trank, in addition to a lot of other raid healing cooldowns, gets a huge buff for 5-mans, which is insanely needed because the spell was just bad in 5-mans. Now, they updated some visuals for F-Low, Life Bloom, Regrowth, Rejuve, Swiftmen, Tranquility, and Wild Growth as well on top of it. And they updated Lycara's meditation to be Lycara's inspiration. I believe Volk was even writing in his article basically about how the buffs were not working properly. So it seems like they're basically just revamping a lot of those things. On the tier set side, the tier set bonuses are changing based on your hero talent. So everybody kind of has 2 tier set bonuses they can jump between. Keeper of the Grove is when you cast Incarn or Convoke, you call upon the assistance of a Dryad that casts Trank at half effectiveness and instantly regrowths your lowest health ally at 200%. So you hit your Convoke and you're also applying an instant heal thanks to the Dryad. And then when it fades, your next 2 Swiftmen's heal for an additional amount equal to 5% of your healing done while it was active, and splash some of their healing onto nearby allies, reduced beyond 5 targets. The Wildstalker side is increasing the rate at which you get your symbiotic blooms, and casting Regrowth with clear casting causes your blooms to grow up onto 2 nearby allies. The blooms have a chance to trigger bursting growth every 2 seconds at 100% effectiveness, and each stack of symbiotic blooms on an ally increases bursting growth healing taken. So in a lot of cases, you get some more direct healing, but you're still not really doing a lot with these changes to build up the actual hot component or hot gameplay of RDruid. I think that they're really super light-handed when it comes to some of the RDruid changes, and it's kind of surprising. Even some of the things like moving around a couple priority talents and making them a little bit easier to be able to select and have a little bit less opportunity cost. Those are some changes that they've made for other healers, but they haven't yet made them for RDruid. So pretty disappointing for them at the start. On the preservation side, they got some really big changes. First off, Flame Shaper's engulf damage and healing has been increased by 100%. Now requires the target to have Fire Breath or Dream Breath active to use it. And the effectiveness now scales by 20% with each damage or healing over time effect instead of 50. Fulminous Roar no longer decreases the duration of Fire Breath or Dream Breath. So you're not kind of just munching them. They also got a huge amount of talent updates that are really 5-man focused, which is sick. Your Empower spells are 10% more effective. While charging a healing Empower spell, by the way, you cannot be knocked back. This is a really insane effect for Evokers to get because there's been a lot of different knockbacks in a variety of dungeons in particular, and nothing is more tilting than building up your high Empower stacks and just losing it because of a knockback. Temporal Compression in the talent Tempo Charge is increasing the healing or damage of your next Empower spell by 5% a stack. You also are getting Just in Time being redesigned. It now reduces time dilation's cooldown by 10 seconds and grants an additional charge. So you're able to consistently be using time dilations throughout the dungeons very regularly, and having just small, almost free externals to just start tossing out that are just good value as well. You don't have to sit there and kind of hold it forever. You can kind of just freely send one and you'll be chilling. Delay Harm has also been redesigned. So instead of having a higher threshold of damage that it's delaying, it's taking some of the damage that is delayed from time dilation and it's absorbing it instead. They noticed that, basically Prez doesn't really have damage reduction, so they wanted to make sure that they had some better value on hand. But I think in a lot of cases, just having 2 charges is probably going to be better value for what a lot of dungeons are throwing at you. Temporal Artificer is going to reduce the cooldown of Rewind by 90 seconds. And so what they're doing is they're actually moving Stasis higher up in the talent tree to make it easier to take, and they're having it compete with cooldown reduction for Rewind. You're probably just going to run Stasis anyway, but it's cool that there's at least an option that's going to be a little bit more passive on hand. Some talents like Erasure and Punctuality. Erasure is cooldown reduction for your Rewind, so they're moving it to compete with Stasis higher in the tree. and Punctuality is reversion charges, and they're just giving that to you baseline, which is sick. Emerald Blossom's getting a buff. Temporal Anomalies Absorb is increased by 100%, but this is basically the same cooldown management thing that we saw out of Tranquility, where this is basically built for 5-man buffs. So each time that you're seeing Temporal Anomaly getting buffed, Dreamflight getting buffed, these are basically 5-man buffs that are going to be about equal for a 20-man Mythic raid as to what we had before. For Preservation's tier set bonuses, apparently on PTR, it's actually just 60 seconds of cooldown reduction for Tip the Scales instead of this burst and temporal cycle type stuff. So just knocking 60 seconds off Tip the Scales is really insane because, of course, you're getting the cooldown reduction out of Temporal Burst, which is giving you back your Empower spells more rapidly. And when that Temporal Burst is active, having your Chrono Flame striking additional targets and repeating more damage and healing is just going to be a nice dub. Getting access to more Tip the Scales allows you to use it more aggressively and gives you a lot more cooldown reduction, which I think is a huge part of what Prez has needed for a long time in a 5-man environment. So with this and a lot of the changes that they made into the base talent tree, lots of good 5-man changes coming in for the spec. On the Flame Shaper side, Engulf is stoking your Inner Flame, increasing your damage and healing over time by 40%, and increasing your chance to gain Essence Burst by 50% for 10 seconds, stacking twice. Consuming that Essence Burst during Inner Flame fires an Essence Bomb at your target, damaging nearby enemies or healing nearby allies, reduced beyond 5 targets. So Flame Shaper's more historically been for raiding and having to have if this situation meets this situation, then you get this buff. Probably adds a lot more mechanics into the mix to juggle between, but getting access to a lot more, or increasing your chance to gain more Essence Burst, to give you more resources, to have more effective ramps in raid, well, that could just be a dub. But that is a lot of stacking layered effects on top of each other. Still, really good changes coming in for Prez on the M+ side. On the Mistweaver side, they are also getting this adjustment. This is, again, a 5-man buff for Revival and Restoral, but it's no change at all at 20 players Mythic. So keep that in mind. But that's also the only class changes that they got. It's actually insane. This is like the first time, I think, in ages that Mistweaver hasn't gotten an insane amount of changes. So, hey, Revival and Restoral getting better in 5-mans. That's pretty good. They were like solid cooldowns already, but now they're going to be really powerful, which is nice. Their tier sets have changed or are really, really cool, I gotta tell you. Heart of the Jade Serpent, this is the cooldown reduction that you get during Conduit of the Celestials. I'll show it to you really quick. This is basically when you are getting the additional cooldown reduction for, Renewing Mist, Rising Sun Kick, Thunder Focus Tea, all that fun stuff out of Conduit of the Celestials. So it additionally triggers for 8 seconds after 100% at 100% effectiveness after you cast Thunder Focus Tea. So every single time you cast Thunder Focus Tea, you start actually gaining more kicks, Renewing Mist, and Thunder Focus Tea and Life Cocoon and everything like that. Really, really cool. Additionally, during this period, you also get more haste while active and for 4 seconds afterwards. And so what this means is that you're also going to be getting an insane amount of rushing wind kick. Any hasted cooldowns during this period is really going to heavily accelerate it. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of the gameplay is going to change or at least like adjust a little bit. So you could just like spend a whole lot of time kicking very frequently, get your max extensions out of like Rising Mist, get your, as maxed out as you possibly can on like Renewing Mist healing and everything, and just start blasting. But that's going to feel really, really good, I think, for like Caster, Weaver, Yu'lon kind of gameplay in the raid coming up. It's going to give you really, really high hot spreads. So you're basically touching everything. And it's also just going to be really good damage. Like Mistweaver's raid damage was obviously insane in Liberation of Undermine, but it's still going to be really good in the Koreshi Mana Omega place as well. Master of Harmony, gaining vitality is an increasing chance to cause your next Tiger Palm to unleash a harmonic charge, dealing nature damage split between your target and nearby enemies, and healing up to 5 injured allies. The 4 set is casting Thunder Focus Tea guarantees that your next 2 Tiger Palms will also trigger a harmonic surge. This honestly, I'm kind of a big fan of, especially for how Master of Harmony plays in dungeons where you're fist weaving, you're dealing additional damage, and you're producing some additional healing. It's a nice, I guess it's a bunch of like fluff healing that you're getting on hand. We'll see how much actual like meaty healing that it does. But I feel like a lot of Mistweaver healing in 5-mans is already kind of like stacking up a bunch of smaller healing effects to start pumping out a lot of output onto your allies. So that's pretty cool. Not too much like extra work that you have to put in, and it just naturally increases your output. The 2 and 4 set bonus for Conduit just kind of accelerates your gameplay, which I think was already a good boon out of Conduit. Now they just make it a little bit better. On the Holy Pally side, they're getting a couple new talent options and some repositioning for some of their talents. Pillars of Light is causing your allies with Beacon to be healed every 3 seconds. Beacon of Virtue instantly heals allies. The Beacon of Light is now only transferring healing from direct healing now and Light of Dawn. Healing transfers have been increased by 10%. So Paladin had this issue early in Liberation of Undermine where all of these extra healing effects were actually just lagging the shit out of the game. And so now they're actually going to try to stop that effect. Pare down what is actually transferring into your beacons, but hopefully make it a little bit better in the process. The big thing they're doing is changing around Infusion of Light and some of your caster spells. This is going to be really, really cool because Infusion is going to reduce the cast time of Holy Light and make your next Flash of Light instant cast, and it's going to activate on a chance when casting Holy Shock. Now, historically, it's been off of your Holy Shock crits, which give you like this really powerful feeling at the end of expansions where you're always having Infusion up out of almost every single Holy Shock. But I really like that they're actually going to make it more consistent because Paladin's been like glutted with Infusion procs that don't really feel good. So I would rather have less Infusion procs because I think that's what it's going to mean. I would rather have less Infusion procs, but I also just have them stronger. Divine Favor, which you get from casting Holy Prism, is reducing your mana cost by 100%, which is going to be nice, but it's no longer decreasing your cast time. So what this is going to mean, crit's going to be less valuable. Divine Favor is going to be giving you free cast, and you always want to be hitting those Holy Lights and your buffed up Holy Lights after a Holy Prism cast every single time. True Prevails, which is your extra healing out of Judgment, where it's like proc an extra heal effect, and Relentless Inquisitor, which is like your haste benefit. Those are both like shunted off to like the left and right sides of your trees. Now they've been readjusting their talent trees, probably to make them a little bit easier to be able to select. So pretty good changes, I think, for Pally, but also kind of limited so far. The Herald tier set is causing your Dawnlight healing and damage to be increased by 30%, and you gain Solar Wrath after Avenging Wrath fades, which causes your son's avatar effect to linger for an additional 10 seconds. So what does this actually mean? Dawnlight does more healing, and you are also going to have your laser beams as a Herald of the Sun Pally linger longer. And as a result, it's probably going to make you pretty strong when it comes to a lot of like more stacked encounters where you can drag the laser beams through a lot of players, get a lot more value out of it. And Solar Wrath's the Herald 4 set, is increasing the effectiveness of your Holy Power spenders by 15% and grants you 2 Dawnlights. So, as a result, you can spread around some more Dawnlights, have some more laser beams going out onto people, and you get a little bit of value out of your spenders. So it seems like you're still keeping a lot of focus on maximizing your wings uptime and really only doing healing during your wings, but there's a little bit more like extension to that period. You kind of like have your wings end, but then your son's avatar is still lingering around for a little bit, and your spenders get a little bit better after that. So it's sort of like an off-ramp, basically, for your healing, where, yeah, wings is down, but you're still doing some healing, and you're working on like building up your next wing. Seems decent. Lightsmith, Hammer and Anvil. This is the healing that comes from activating Judgment. It's increased by 15%, and it can also be activated by Crusader Strike at 100% effectiveness as well. That's kind of neat. Again, having more of like the damage to healing conversion be a focus. Hammer and Anvil also grants a stack of Masterwork, causing your next armament to cast one lesser version of itself on a nearby ally for each stack. This is kind of interesting too, because Lightsmith just got like butchered going into season 2. And I don't know if this is really enough to bring it back in from all we've seen so far, but it is kind of cool that they're still trying to reinforce like Avenging Crusader, damage to healing type build, where you're basically just kind of executing a damage rotation the entire time. It does feel like you have a lot of like small healing effects after all the nerfs they put in after Season 1, so I don't really expect it to be that strong, but I am mostly surprised that Paladin isn't getting any changes to Tyr's Deliverance, because they're still trying to encourage some casted spells, but then a talent like Tyr's, which is supposed to be buffing up your casted spells a lot, just gets like no mention, and it's still a pretty awful talent as well. Very weird. On the Disc Priest side, Holy Nova's mana cost has been reduced by 87%. Luminous Barrier is also getting the same 5-man sort of buffs, where it's better in 5-mans, but it's not as strong in 20-mans, all that good stuff. This is going to be kind of interesting, but I think Luminous Barrier is still going to be kind of mediocre. It might be some situations where you could get away with the sort of like mass barrier effect, because I would expect it to be like 35 to 40% of your health absorbed by Luminous Barrier for 5 players, but it's also on a 3-minute cooldown. So it'll be pretty good after they buff it a lot. I just don't know if you necessarily want to run it in like high-end groups. It probably would be pretty good to run in like lower performing groups where everyone's just kind of spread out all over the place though. So honestly, I wish they would get rid of it, but the fact that they're not, it's probably gonna be pretty good, or at least in pugs. Also, they're making it so that Disc actually has to spend mana, which sucks. Powered Shield's mana cost has been increased by 8%. Powered Radiance mana cost has been increased by 20%. Uppies is doing more healing and damage, 35% buff there. And Surge of Light is no longer free. It's a 50% discount to your flash heals instead of that 100% bonus coming in. One big thing is that Shield Discipline is giving you your mana back based on your maximum mana. So it's not scaling with additional mana or anything like that. And we have not been running Shield Discipline in raids. It's been pretty good, or it's been like decent enough to run in 5-mans if you need them additional mana. Probably a pretty good chance that you would run with it after these changes coming into effect. But what's really cool about Disc is the tier set bonuses coming in. The 2 set, the first bolt of each penance cast damages or heals for 200% more. So there's a little more opportunity cost when it comes to offensive or defensive penances, where you have to think about it a little bit more. I think that's good, and it'll probably encourage you to be sharper on your defensive penance casts, which is good. Casting Premonition of Piety or Solace grants 2 stacks of Insight at max effectiveness, and consuming a stack of Insight increases your haste. And multiple applications may overlap as well. This is going to be really, really insane. So in raids, you're already using Insight and Piety together, and you're going to cast 4 penances out of that. But by activating Piety, you also get 2 additional stacks of Insight. So you could cast 6 penances out of that. So you'd have like the 5 stacks of Insight, plus you're able to have 1 as you are casting it as well. And then as a result of consuming the 5 stacks into the 6th, then it ends and you get a 7th. So you have a crazy amount of penance, to the point that your entire raid ramp is predominantly just going to be mashing the penance button and blasting as much output as you can into your Piety Overheal redirect, which is going to be really sick. It also means that your raid ramp is going to be entirely mobile. So you'll just be able to sit there and move the entire time as you're channeling all these penances. And if you play Drakthir, you can double jump as you are channeling the penances as well. Makes you a lot more mobile in the incoming raid. And in a 5-man environment, the extra haste kind of comes into play a little bit more by allowing you to cast more Power Word Shield. Even though it'll cost more mana, it is really nice to have the additional Power Word Shields onto your team. Allows you to better blanket your team whenever incoming damage is going out. And you can also be looking to use Piety on its own, use cooldown reduction, cast like a penance and a shield and a penance again, and then a shield again, so you can start alternating between those. And honestly, just be vibing. It's going to be pretty sick. Not going to lie, it's a nice way of smoothing out gameplay in a 5-man environment. It makes you way more mobile in a raid. This is like a really badass tier set and helps you in a lot of different ways. The Void Weaver set is okay. Void Blast and Penance damage is increased by 40%. And your Void Blast's cast time is reduced by 20%. So you are just going to be mashing the living daylights out of Void Blast doing a whole bunch of damage out of it. And of course, its cooldown, I think, is more of like a Shadow Priest thing. Pretty sure. It also is causing your Rift to grow instead of just relying on penance to grow your Entropic Rift. Collapsing Void is increasing your Rift's damage by an additional 10%. And the damage of your next Mind Blast is increased by up to 200% based on the size of the rift when it collapses. So the damage from Mind Blast is actually just nothing. It doesn't really deal much damage on its own. And usually how you're setting up your healing is you're not really relying on your Mind Blast to do anything. You're kind of just using it to deploy the rift as well. So this is actually pretty weak in a lot of ways for Voidweaver. And I think Oracle is like massively better from what we've seen out of the tier set changes so far. On the Holy Priest side, they're also getting affected once again by the AoE healing cooldown buffs and everything like that for 5-mans. So keep in mind, it's a Divine Hymn buff for 5-mans, not for 20-man Mythic Raids or anything like that. Surge of Light, just like Disc Priest, is reducing the cost of Flash Shield by 50% instead of 100%. And Apotheosis is no longer getting the special mana treatment where Holy Words are totally free. They're now half off when Apotheosis is up. And honestly, it kind of makes sense with the Apotheosis extending talents in particular in a raid. You were just casting a whole bunch of free Holy Words like mad. It was actually just really insane. So I understand why they're doing it. But also to compensate, they're reducing the mana cost of Heal, Poe, Flash, Prayer of Mending, Serenity, Sanctify, Renew, and Holy Fire by a pretty decent margin. Holy never really struggled that much with mana these days, but I think it's actually a net mana nerf because of how many Holy Words we were just casting for free the entire time. So you might have to be a little more sparing with your Prayer of Healing cast and basically only cast it during a Prayer Circle buff, which is a 20% discount. That being said, I think the spec is probably going to be totally fine with it. I mean, if you have to rein in how much you cast Prayer of Healing, especially in a raid, that's not a bad thing whatsoever. Epiphany gets a really nice buff in that it's ignoring the current cooldown of Prayer of Mending when it triggers instead of resetting the cooldown. So whenever you cast a Holy Word, you activate Epiphany, you can just cast the Prayer of Mending, not have to worry about the cooldown, or not really have to worry about like gaming it, because it's a 10-ish second cooldown on Prayer of Mending. And so you would like cast Prayer of Mending, try to cast a couple Holy Words really quickly, try to get the reset, and try to play around the minigame. And now you don't have to worry about that at all, which is really super nice. So absolute dub on that one. And Holy Priest gets some really fun tier set bonuses. Your Archon set, Halo reduces the cooldown of your Serenity and Sanctify by 5 seconds, and Resonant Energy additionally increases the healing of your Holy Words by 5%. So, big thing with Resonant Energy is, of course, it's already amplifying your healing when allies are healed by your Halo. And so now you're also further incentivized to be dumping Holy Words during that Halo time, which is also nice because you get the cooldown reduction added into it as well. And while Power Surge is active, every 2 casts of Serenity or Sanctify adds another Halo to the effect at 100% effectiveness, stacking up to 2 times. So, one downside, you don't get an additional stack of Resonant Energy. You don't get additional healing buffs from these extra Halos, but it does extend the duration of those healing buffs, allowing you to kind of plan out a bit more of your healing setup. A lot of times what people were doing with Archon was aligning your Halo and Apotheosis together to just dump and blast lots of Holy Words left, right, and center. Gameplay's still going to be there, but your window sort of opens up to be a little bit wider because Resonant Energy had like a fairly low duration of increased healing. Now that range of healing gets a little bit wider because you're having the extra Halos that are being cast on your second, third, fourth, etc. Halos because you've extended it after the first one. So you can have more healing for a longer period of time and more Halos, which give you more Surge procs, which also give you more Sanctifies. So it's a lot, but it's actually going to be quite fun. Basically, bright shiny lights come up and you just mash buttons. It'll be sick. Oracle, a little more low-key. Casting Prayer of Mending also procs a heal on the target. 4-set bonus. Casting Piety or Solace gives you some more insight stacks. Consuming a stack increases your haste. Holy Priest doesn't really care that much about haste, of course, but more haste means more Prayer of Mendings. More Prayer of Mendings means more Apotheosis uptime. More Apotheosis uptime means more holy words as well. So you actually have some good benefits there. Epiphany is going to be a lot better to play. I think Oracle is going to be stupid dominant as well, because the amount of apotheosis value that you're going to be able to get is going to be phenomenally important. We're also probably going to be doing more overheal, so Piety is going to be important. So as long as Piety is really strong for Oracle Holy Priest, I think that's probably going to be the direction. But Archon's also just kind of accelerating the gameplay, sort of similar to what Mistweaver is also getting. On the Resto Shaman side, to wrap us up, they also are getting the buff to Healing Tide, increasing their healing for 5-mans, no changes for 20 players, decaying and everything like that. Small buff between 6 and 19 players, nerf beyond 20. The big downside is there's no other talent changes going on with Shaman right now, which to me just makes no sense whatsoever. We'll continue this in a sec. The tier set bonuses, though. Farseer, your ancestral swiftness. It not only spawns a Farseer on its own, but it's going to spawn an empowered ancestor, an empowered grandpa, for 15 seconds that deals more damage, more healing. Huzzah. Ancestral swiftness also reduces the cast time of your spells by 8%, the mana cost by 8%, and increases the recharge rate of Lava Burst and Riptide by 16% for 8 seconds. Big issue with this is that Riptide kind of sucks, like in a pretty big way. Thune's article, when he talked about talents, basically summarizes it as well, where 80% of the healing out of Riptide is actually the direct healing, and 17-20% of it is actually going to be the actual hot component to it. So Riptide's not that great of an ability. A lot of the talents like Withering Waves and Wuthering Waves, whatever it is, are not that good either. Farseer has like no extra quality of life that Totemic gives you, and like these bonuses are just kind of mediocre. Very strange. Totemic, though, it just gets more cool stuff. It's weird. After you consume all your Whirling Element motes, these are like buffing up your next single target heal and things like that. After you consume them, you cast Downpour at 200% effectiveness at your Surging Totem's location. So getting used to which of the motes you're consuming last, and knowing that it's going to proc a Downpour that's going to be very powerful is going to be nuts. You can also really well time this in a 5-man environment for the extra bonus HP that you might need. And after casting Downpour, your next Chain Heal, Heal Wave, or Heal Surge cast again at 150% effectiveness. So I got to tell you, super disappointed that they're not making any talent changes, at least just yet. But the set bonuses for Totemic look sick. The set bonuses for Farseer kind of just double down on the things that, are just kind of average for the spec, I would say. There's nothing really super exciting coming in for Farseer. And I think it's the last healer hero talent that has not been meta and not been like widespread in use. And even if they keep on buffing up the numbers, the quality of life for playing it is just way worse than Totemic, so why would you want to? But I think for a lot of Totemic players, I've heard that they really enjoyed it at the start of the expansion, but now they want a little bit of a challenge without having to re-roll. And so this is at least a little bit of interesting gameplay for how you time and utilize your Downpours, which is sick. But then there's just no other class tree talents, there's no other spec tree talent updates or anything like that for Shaman. It's very, very strange coming into it. So I hope that they're at least going to be able to enjoy it. Wowhead has all the links and updates, and I'll have some in the description down below as well for all these changes. And of course, we're going to be streaming, doing all our PTR content, so make sure you check out all of it in the description down below. Big love to our patrons for making all this content possible. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll catch y'all next time.